The war in Ukraine grinds on, showing no signs of abating. It has been over a year since Russian forces first crossed the border, igniting a conflict that has reshaped the region. What began as a swift invasion has devolved into a bloody war of attrition, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Both sides are dug in, determined to achieve their objectives, creating a stalemate that has led to prolonged suffering. The conflict has already claimed countless lives, leaving families shattered and communities in ruins. Millions have been displaced from their homes, forced to seek refuge in neighboring countries, or live in makeshift camps. The world watches with bated breath, hoping for a swift and peaceful resolution, but the path to peace remains elusive. The situation on the ground remains fluid and dangerous, with daily skirmishes and ongoing battles. Russia continues to bombard Ukrainian cities with artillery fire, causing widespread destruction and fear among civilians. Ukraine, bolstered by Western support, is mounting a fierce defense, determined to reclaim its territory and sovereignty. The conflict has evolved into a complex web of military maneuvers, political posturing, and international intrigue, with no clear end in sight. In a significant development, Russian forces have seized control of the town of New York in eastern Ukraine. This hard-fought victory comes after weeks of intense fighting. It gives Russia a strategic foothold in the Donbas region. New York, while small, holds symbolic and strategic value. Control of the town offers Russia several advantages. It provides a key supply route for their troops. It also puts pressure on Ukrainian forces defending nearby cities. The capture of New York is a blow to Ukraine. It demonstrates Russia's continued ability to make advances, despite facing stiff resistance. Ukraine has launched a counteroffensive in Russia's Kursk region. This bold move signals Ukraine's determination to take the fight to Russian soil. The counteroffensive is a risky gamble for Ukraine. It involves diverting troops and resources from other fronts. Success could bolster Ukrainian morale and put pressure on Russia. However, failure could leave Ukrainian forces vulnerable elsewhere. The scale of the counteroffensive remains unclear. Initial reports suggest Ukrainian forces have made some gains. They have struck military targets within Russia. The situation is developing rapidly. The coming days will be crucial in determining the success or failure of Ukraine's gamble. The capture of New York and the counteroffensive in Kursk represent a dangerous escalation of the conflict. Both sides are engaged in a high-stakes game of chess. Each move carries significant risks and rewards. Russia's capture of New York demonstrates its continued military capabilities. It also highlights its resolve to achieve its objectives in Ukraine, whatever the cost. Ukraine's counteroffensive is a bold move. It aims to disrupt Russia's momentum and force them to divert resources. The outcome of both these developments will have lasting implications for the war. Section 5. The world reacts, condemnation, and calls for peace. The international community has condemned Russia's continued aggression in Ukraine. The capture of New York has been met with widespread condemnation. World leaders are calling for an immediate ceasefire and a return to the negotiating table. The United Nations is urging all parties to respect international law and protect civilians. Humanitarian organizations are struggling to provide aid to those affected by the fighting. The war in Ukraine has created a humanitarian crisis. Millions have been displaced from their homes. The international community is grappling with how to respond to this unfolding tragedy. Section 6. The human cost. A refugee crisis unfolds. The war in Ukraine has created a refugee crisis on a scale not seen in Europe since World War II. Millions of Ukrainians have fled their homes, seeking safety in neighboring countries. The majority are women and children, separated from their husbands and fathers. These refugees face an uncertain future. They are traumatized by the violence they have witnessed. They are struggling to rebuild their lives in unfamiliar surroundings. The international community is providing humanitarian assistance. However, the needs are immense. The refugee crisis is a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict. Section 7. Inside the propaganda war, shaping the narrative. The war in Ukraine is being fought not just on the battlefield, but also in the media. The battle for hearts and minds is as crucial as the physical conflict. Both sides are engaged in a fierce propaganda war, each trying to sway public opinion and international support in their favor. They are vying to control the narrative and win over public opinion. The media landscape has become a crucial front in this conflict. Russia claims its special military operation is necessary to denazify Ukraine, presenting itself as a liberator. Ukraine, on the other hand, accuses Russia of waging an unprovoked war of aggression, framing itself as a defender of sovereignty and democracy. The truth, as is often the case, lies somewhere in between. The complexity of the situation is often lost in the simplified narratives presented by both sides. Social media has become a key battleground in this information war. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are flooded with posts, videos, and memes. Both sides are using it to spread their message and discredit their opponents. The speed and reach of social media make it a powerful tool in shaping perceptions. It is more important than ever to be critical of the information we consume. We must question the sources and seek out multiple perspectives. We must be wary of misinformation and propaganda. In this age of information overload, discernment is our best defense against being manipulated. Section 8. The Cyber Battlefield, a new kind of warfare. The war in Ukraine has also spilled over into cyberspace. Both sides are using cyber attacks to disrupt their opponent's infrastructure and spread disinformation. Russia has been accused of launching cyber attacks against Ukrainian government websites and critical infrastructure. Ukraine has responded in kind, targeting Russian military and financial institutions. Cyber warfare is a new and dangerous frontier in modern conflict. It has the potential to cause significant damage to civilian infrastructure and disrupt essential services. The international community is still grappling with how to regulate this new form of warfare. The lines between acceptable and unacceptable behavior in cyberspace remain blurred. Section 9. The Economic Fallout, Global Implications. The war in Ukraine is having a profound impact on the global economy, affecting various sectors and regions in different ways. Sanctions imposed on Russia by the West are disrupting supply chains and driving up energy prices, leading to higher costs for consumers and businesses alike. The war is also contributing to rising food prices, making it harder for families around the world to afford basic necessities. Russia and Ukraine are major exporters of wheat and other grains, and the conflict is severely impacting their ability to supply these essential commodities to the global market. The conflict is exacerbating existing economic challenges, including inflation and supply chain disruptions, which were already strained due to the pandemic. The International Monetary Fund has warned that the war could push the global economy into recession, with developing countries being particularly vulnerable. The economic fallout from the conflict is likely to be felt for years to come, affecting everything from employment rates to international trade agreements. It will require a coordinated global response to mitigate the damage, involving not just governments, but also international organizations and private sector stakeholders. In the long term, this crisis could also accelerate the transition to renewable energy sources as countries seek to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels and enhance energy security. Additionally, the humanitarian impact of the war cannot be overlooked, with millions displaced and in need of urgent assistance, further straining global resources. Ultimately, the global community must come together to build resilience and ensure a more stable and prosperous future for all. Section 10. A Glimmer of Hope? Diplomatic efforts continue. Despite the escalating violence, diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine are ongoing. Negotiators from both sides have met on several occasions. They are attempting to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict. However, progress has been slow. Significant differences remain on key issues. These include the status of the Donbas region and the future of Crimea. Despite the challenges, the international community remains committed to finding a diplomatic solution. The stakes are simply too high to allow this conflict to continue. A negotiated settlement is the only way to prevent further bloodshed and suffering. Section 11. The Road Ahead, Uncertain Futures. The war in Ukraine has entered a dangerous new phase. The capture of New York and the counteroffensive in Kursk signal the potential for further escalation. The coming weeks and months will be critical in determining the trajectory of the conflict. The international community must continue to pressure both sides to return to the negotiating table. A negotiated settlement is the only way to end the bloodshed and prevent further suffering. The world is watching and hoping for peace. The human cost of this conflict is simply too high to bear.